You're never really
Day before yesterday. I do want to say one thing about Tish James. I knew Tish before when she was a city council person. And I used to sit up on that thing, rostrum, and trying to keep people quiet. Never had to bother with her. She was the best behaved of everybody.
because I was on the back row.
Anyway,
That's a secret.
Tish was a public advocate. That was there was somebody in between us, and I think that was Bill de Blasio.
Correct.
Oh, sorry. And Tish was a terrific public advocate. I never had to call you to ask you to do anything for me. I didn't. But anyway, Tish James, introduce you to the group here from Citizens Union. Take it away, girl.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
this
you.
is
We're,
yours.
we're mic'd up, so we're
That's
good.
yours.
Thank you, Betsy. Round of applause for Betsy Godbound.
Thank you.
Attorney General, it is an honor to have you here at Citizens
Thank you,
Union
John.
for Civic Conversation. We've got, as you see, all these folks in the room, and then a whole nother host online.
Okay.
And you and I will have a conversation that want to focus on policy.
Yeah.
Because that's the heart of what Citizens Union does. And there are a lot of issues, as you know, New York's oldest good government group, been around more than a century, combating corruption, trying to get honest and accountable government, fair and open elections. And a lot of these things are under assault right now. And you are right on the front lines.
Yeah.
So we look to you for answers. I want to start big.
Okay.
We are facing Lee Bollinger, former president of Columbia University, said the other day, noted lawyer himself, what he called an authoritarian assault on democracy. There are power grabs that look like they are designed to provoke a constitutional crisis.
Yes.
Now, you have played a leadership role
Mhm.
among state AGs in trying to be a check and balance on executive power, which is difficult to check and balance. Tell us about your leadership in that effort and what state AGs are planning and what we can expect in the coming months.
Okay. So this is not going to be a simple answer.
No, it's not.
It's not.
But it's
So
an important one.
It is an important one. So thank you, John, and thank you, Citizens Union, for inviting me. And thank you, Betsy, and congratulations. And it's great to see so many friends in the audience. Let me begin by saying the following. Yesterday, I was dealing with 3 children who were detained and then deported in upstate New York in Jefferson County. Deported without any due process, deported with their mother to Texas. They were working on a ferry, a dairy farm in upstate New York in Jefferson County. Just like that. Simply because they were undocumented individuals. They were just deported just like that. So we're working with the Immigration Coalition and their attorneys, obviously, to try to get them back. And we'll be joining with those attorneys in filing an action, habeas, to get those young people back. This is what I deal with on a daily basis. Individuals who come up to me, who say, Tish, I'm afraid that my loved one, my significant other, my partner, my child will be deported. Individuals are afraid to go to school, go to the doctor's office. Individuals who have been witnesses to horrific crimes in the city and in the state of New York are afraid to go into courthouses because they're concerned about ICE. It's impacting all of us as a society. So as one of the attorney generals who are stepping up, I dealt with Trump 1, the first administration, and we were successful 80% of our time. Congress wants to take a lot of credit, but the reality is that it's attorneys general who are stepping up and obviously defending democracy. So as a result of our success during the first administration, when this new bunch of attorneys general came in, I decided to organize all of them. And what we decided to do in anticipation of the possibility that he would win this election, we analyzed Project 2025. We looked at jurisdiction. We looked at standing. We looked at circuits. We looked at all of the cases that we had previously been involved in. We distributed them to states, all of the Democratic states. There are 23 of us, and we were ready on day 1, which is why when he filed the executive order, and he is filing these executive orders with such rapidity and volume that it is alarming. But the first one was birthright citizenship, as we all know, which is enshrined in our Constitution. And we responded to that executive order within 48 hours because we were ready. Then The next case that New York led on was the case involving OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, where he froze funds in FEMA.
Mhm.
We filed an action, we got a TRO, we got a preliminary injunction. The next case, Elon Musk and Doge and his band of musketeers within the Department of Treasury, which had access to your private information, your Social Security, your addresses, all of that private data they had access to. Again, TRO, preliminary injunction. Next case that we sought was in regards to the probationary employees. We filed a lawsuit, again, protecting those probationary employees. Again, we were successful. The next case was in regards to NIH, National Institute of Health. National Institute of Health, which provides grants to the University of Buffalo, the University of Albany, Stony Brook, groundbreaking research to find cures to cancer, Parkinson, heart disease. Those three institutions, which are the economic engines for those communities. Again, TRO and a preliminary injunction. Next case was on the teacher grants, again, to provide funds for teachers to teach in Title I schools, in rural areas. Again, we were able to get a TRO and a PI. Then the next case was the dismantling of the Department of Education. Again, because we were concerned, obviously it impacted New York, but we were also concerned about Title I schools. We were concerned about disabled children. We're concerned about civil rights. We're concerned about research. Again, we were successful. TRO, preliminary injunction. I can go on and on with all of the cases.
You've been busy.
Yeah, we've been very busy. And we are anticipating, we are about to go into court. We've filed yesterday a court against some $11 billion in grants to fund COVID initiatives. The administration's position is COVID is over. We no longer need the money. It would affect $400 million going to the state of New York. They clawed back all of that money. We went into court yesterday. We are seeking their response. We are also anticipating a lawsuit against 7 agencies that they have dismantled. We anticipate that he will issue an executive order in the coming days against HUD, Housing and Urban Development, which will have a great impact on the state of New York and its funding. But we are anticipating, again, because it was laid out in their playbook in Project 2025, and that's why we are ready to respond. And we have been highly successful. There's one case that we were not successful on, and that was the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, where they wanted to reinstate one individual, a Democratic commissioner. We were not successful on that particular case, but we're appealing. The bottom line is that the law should be used both. I see the law as a means to address wrongs, and the President of the United States cannot, with the stroke of a pen, well, in his case, a Sharpie, can basically just evade, ignore, decimate a law. And particularly, he cannot trespass on the rights of Congress. He is in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. He has exceeded his authority. He's in violation of the Empowerment Act. All of those causes of actions have been successful in our efforts, again, to basically stand up for democracy, to stand up for our freedom, and to stand up for our liberties. At the same time, we've been focusing on immigration and all of these illegal actions against individuals who came to this country seeking freedom and seeking opportunity. And due process is foundational to our democracy. So there are individuals who have said, oh, Tish, were there members of gangs? Well, there hasn't been due process. We haven't made any determination as to their status. And in fact, they committed a mistake yesterday, as you know, where they basically deported an individual
from Maryland,
a father who was married to a citizen and who had protective status. We've also filed a number of briefs in regards to TPS for Venezuelans, for Haitians, for gender affirming care, for DEI, and the list goes on and on and on. And so Am I busy? Yeah.
Yeah, you're busy. And I think it's fair to say, and I wanted you to go through that list because it's important for people to understand how many fronts you're working on at a time when a lot of institutions, including legal institutions, seem to be sort of taking the knee on threat. It's clear you are not. You are
Yeah.
using law as a shield and a sword. I just want to give a specific example that gets to home rule. When there are efforts to claw back funds, obviously it creates a lot of uncertainty around New York's budget,
Correct.
the state budget.
Correct.
But dollars that have been allocated by Congress, and you engage in that lawsuit, are you confident that those efforts will not continue in the appeal process? I mean,
No, they're appealing. They're appealing some of our cases all directly to the Supreme Court currently.
but does that freeze their efforts and ability to claw back those funds in those areas?
So most of them, we're getting stays. We've been successful in getting stays on any action that they are seeking, or we've been successful against any stays. And so with regards to the case of OMB against FEMA, those funds have been unfrozen, and so they're flowing. With regards to those individuals those probationary employees who were fired, they have been reinstated. And again, the law indicates that states should be given 60 days notice with respect to the termination of any probationary employee, and they did not give us any notice at all. So those probationary employees have been reinstated. The 10,000 employees in HHS that were terminated yesterday, we're looking at that. I believe another state will be leading on that. So we have been successful again against any stays during this appeal process.
And the reason I ask is it's unclear that the administration's instinct is to always follow the law. I'm being polite, and therefore it's a question of whether they're going to respect those court orders.
Well, so far we have not crossed the Rubicon. We're not in a constitutional crisis. They've indicated that they are going to follow the law.
If that happens, what do you do?
And they have been indicating that they're winning, but that's not true. They're losing. And Elon Musk, again, has led the effort again because he seeks to impeach federal judges.
That's right.
No disrespect, Judge.
We have a federal judge in the office,
We do.
in the House, so to speak. If it gets to that point, and there is what you deem to be a clear constitutional crisis, what do you do then?
That's the question. So, if in fact there is a court order that they refuse to comply with, we are prepared. There was one particular case in OMB. I'll give you an example. When we filed a lawsuit against OMB when they froze funds from FEMA, during our TRO, we discovered that in fact funds were still frozen. A number of agencies reached out to my office and to my colleague's office and said, Tish, those funds are still frozen, particularly with Head Start and Meals on Wheels and a number of other agencies. What can you do about it? So we were debating whether or not we should seek a motion to comply or a motion for contempt. We decided to file a motion to comply. One, because there was some, Justice indicated that in fact, there were some technical glitches and that they wanted to comply with our court order, but there were some problems turning the funds back on. So we didn't have to file a motion for contempt. In the event that they failed to comply with a court order, we are prepared to seek fines. We are prepared to go in for discovery. We were prepared to put on hearings of their administration officials. Obviously, you can't hold the president of the United States in contempt, but you can hold agency heads and individuals in his administration in contempt. We haven't reached that point yet, but that's something that we are considering. I want all of you to know we meet twice a week. We have discussions with regards to our strategy. And we have moved from just litigation, and now, as a result of my suggestion, I wanted to hear from constituents, and so I'm working with the attorneys general all across this nation, and we're holding what we called impact hearings. So we had an impact hearing in Arizona, where 400 people came out under the leadership of Chris Mays, the attorney general there. The next hearing that we had. Impact hearing that we had was in Minnesota under the leadership of Keith Ellison. I attended that. 1,400 people came out. The next one that we were holding, I believe, is in Colorado. We anticipate a large crowd under Phil Weiser. And then we will be having one in Massachusetts, Vermont, and then ultimately we are having one in New York, in upstate New York.
So this is an important story. There's an effort undergoing. Let's talk about combating corruption, because
Yeah.
that's near and dear to CU's heart. We've seen an effort to basically decriminalize corruption with some actions taken by the Justice Department, whether it's about foreign monies, but obviously here on prosecutions.
Yeah.
My question to you is, what role do you see the Attorney General having to fill that void and deal with corruption cases, whether they were regard to top line or even state level? We've been a big advocate of COLEG. That is a subset of this fight. But how do you see your role in the face of an abandonment of prosecuting corruption cases or enforcing corruption?
So the Office of the Attorney General, first, let me just go back and say, although I'm dealing with a lot on federal initiatives, the reality is that maybe 20% of my time is focused on that. The vast majority of my time is focused on, again, defending the state of New York and focusing on state action. Our office is divided up into six sections: criminal, social, economic, the Solicitor General's office, and State Counsel 5. Within our criminal department, we have a agency which is primarily focused on public integrity. So our public integrity unit works with COLEG, works with state agencies. Oftentimes we get referrals from the second floor, the governor's office, the controller's office, COLEG, again, to prosecute, investigate, and to look at public corruption of elected officials, be they local, statewide, et cetera. And so we work, again, in cooperation with those agencies, and we are prepared to move forward on any public corruption.
Are you ramping up your efforts to compensate for the fact that efforts are being pulled back on other levels?
I'm awaiting the budget of the state of New York to see whether or not we get additional funds.
All right, fair enough. Let's talk about voting rights, another core issue, free and open elections. Just the other day, Trump pushed out an executive order trying to force states to accept voter ID, proof of citizenship, eliminating mail-in voting in many cases. It's exactly the wrong step in the wrong direction. And now the GOP on the federal level is moving forward with the SAVE Act,
Yes.
which is going to be a major fight on Capitol Hill in the coming days. What do you plan to do if the SAVE Act passes, and what's the role of an AG's office to ensure that the state doesn't cave to those executive orders?
Well, first, I'm really happy that Judge Crawford won last night in Wisconsin. Yay. But in Wisconsin, over 70 to 80% of the voters voted for voter ID documentation, and they enshrined it in the state constitution of Wisconsin. The SAVE Act seeks to do basically the same thing, not in the Constitution, but basically pass a law where documentation would be required. Listen, my mom, may she rest in peace, was born here in the United States, was born in the Deep South. She did not have a birth certificate, and neither did my father. The vast majority, I shouldn't say the vast majority, it would have a disproportionate impact on people of color. Two, let me go on to say that in terms of individuals who are voting illegally, individuals who are not citizens, the number is minuscule, it's de minimis. And so this is going to have an impact on people of color, and I think it's going to have an impact on individuals exercising the franchise. And so the attorneys general, we have written a letter, we've sent it to leaders in Washington, D.C., expressing our opposition to the SAVE Act. And we also are anticipating litigation against the EO that just came out from the President of the United States. And I am happy that Senator Schumer, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and others have taken action with respect to that executive order in opposition.
I want to get to two more questions, and then I want to get questions from the audience, from Citizens Union members and our guests. First of all, discovery reform.
Yep.
A topic of much intensity.
Yep.
Do you support it?
Yep.
Okay.
Am I involved in the discussions? Yep. Don't report that.
Not allowed to say that after you say it. But good. All right. That's important clarifying, because that's an
There's
important.
the main obstacle, and that this is off the record, is over 2 words. That's all I'll say.
2 words. Oh,
all
now everyone's
I
going to
will
be
say.
guessing what 2 words they are.
That's
All
all
right.
that I will say.
All right. Second, I want to ask you about this, because the Director of National Intelligence put out a statement stripping individuals. Now, you've come under individual fire from the President of the United States. We should say that. We should also say that's not normal. Let's remember that none of this is normal.
He knows my name.
Yes, he does. And isn't that special? No, but the real issue that just indicates how much you were at the forefront of this fight. And again, typically presidents of the United States don't obsessively attack state.
May I
attorney
disagree
generals.
with you? I don't think it's because I'm at the forefront of this fight. I think it's because he's concerned about the civil judgment that we have against him to the tune of $454 million, which is on appeal in the First Department. And I don't know when that decision will come out, but in the event that it goes against him, in the event that they uphold my judgment, and by the way, interest continues to accrue, I think that's what he's more concerned about.
That may very well be the case, because there were a lot of former Biden administration officials on this list that the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, said that they were pulling security clearances for all these individuals. Point of clarification. Do you have a security clearance, and was it pulled? And if so, does that impact your ability to do your job?
I don't know what they're talking about.
Okay, thank you. That's why I wanted to clarify.
I still go into federal court. I still visit the judge. Oh, I don't say that either.
This is being taped. You know that.
Right. So I don't know what that means. I'm not a federal employee. I'm a state employee. I have my own detail. And I think, he's into, he just likes, performative politics. And that's just another act.
So that was pure bluster, not rooted in reality.
Bluster. It means nothing to me. It has no legal import, and it has no relevance.
Have the changes in leadership at the FBI with regard to Kash Patel and Dan Bongino being deputy director, have that affected any law enforcement or security functions that you're involved in?
So we are involved in a number of task force. As I mentioned earlier, we have a criminal component. So we do, drug interdiction, gun interdiction. We have task force. We work with the federal government in regards to retail theft and a wide range of issues.
Mm-hmm.
All of the guns that are coming up from the South along I-87. And as a result of all of this focus on immigration,
mm-hmm.
It has, they've taken their eye off the ball. And that is, we've got a problem with drugs in our communities.
Yes.
We have a major problem with guns in our communities. And it's unfortunate that should not be the focus. Instead, the focus is on, deporting 3 children who are working on a farm in upstate New York, and colleagues and professors and students who are peacefully protesting.
This is civil liberties, among other things, and basic due process protections. All right, I want to get a chance to get your questions. Members of Citizens Union, we are a membership organization. So raise a hand, ask a question of the Attorney General. I see Khalil Bird, and then we'll go. Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
The Republican attorneys general around the country are also very well organized. What are the most dangerous things that you think they are putting forward? And then my second question is, talk a little bit about what you're seeing with law firms and how that can impact the work that you do and people in New York State.
So one of the cases that I'm dealing with is a doctor in upstate New York who the state of Louisiana would like to indict her, basically for sending mifepristone to someone in the state of Louisiana. The state of Texas has fined this doctor to the tune of $100,000 and is seeking one in Louisiana. They wanted to extradite her, which the governor refused. In the state of Texas, where they want to enforce this judgment, I'm so glad that a clerk in upstate New York refused to file the judgment. So we're dealing with those types of cases where they're coming after medical professionals for simply subscribing and sending to citizens of their respective states medication abortion, which is extremely safe. To the Republican attorneys general, and some of them we worked with on opioids. We've worked with Republican attorneys general on social media, on Meta, on Facebook. We've worked with Republican attorneys general on a number of other multi-state cases. But on cases with respect to federal initiatives, that's where we disagree. We still have meetings with Republican attorneys general. I'm friendly with a number of Republican attorneys general. But when it comes to our liberties, our freedoms, and violating the Constitution and overturning and impeding the powers of Congress or trespassing on the powers of Congress, that's where I have to draw a line in the sand. In regards to your second question, which is
The law firms.
The law firms. Perkins and Coie, Paul Weiss, Skadden, and now I heard of a fourth one that has capitulated, which Wilkie Farr, which has capitulated to the President of the United States.
I think there's a clarification that Perkins did not, or at least
Perkins did not. Perkins and Coie did not. Perkins, right? They stood up, but Skadden, Paul Weiss, and Wilkie Farr. It's rather unfortunate that they would capitulate, that they would bend their knee. Listen, authoritarianism requires cooperation, requires consent, and it requires cooperation. Democracy requires courage.
Mhm.
And it's really critically important that we defend the foundations of our Constitution at this point in time. And it's really critically important that law firms zealously represent their clients. That's really foundational to our Constitution and to our system of laws. And so I'm really disappointed with them. But at the same time, having spoken to individuals at Paul Weiss, they tell me that it was a business decision, a business judgment rule. But I have indicated that there's something more important than that, and that is defending this fragile experiment known as democracy and standing up for freedom and standing up for the rule of law.
And I would, that's a great answer. I would add also, this is a collective action challenge for law firms.
Yeah.
If individual law firms are being targeted because of the actions they had, and other law firms see as an opportunity to poach their lawyers
Correct.
or to undercut them, that creates these contexts.
But attorneys at some of these firms have been interviewed. No one has sought out to poach them. The clients have not left. So I just think it was just easy to capitulate and to agree to this president.
Paul. Wait, we got a microphone coming to you just for purposes of folks who are watching us online.
Hi, thank you so much for all your efforts. The courts have been used effectively by you and the attorneys general and others, but I'm not an attorney. It seems to me like the courts are limited in that they're primarily a reactive tool. In other words, you have to wait for something bad to happen, and then the courts step in, and they're slow. So given that we've got a playbook, is there any way that the courts can be used proactively?
The courts, everyone has everyone has a role, and the judiciary, they're responsible for interpreting the law, and not for basically engaging in policy. That's not their function. That's not their role. It's the role of Congress, and Congress needs to step up. And I would hope that Congress recognizes that by sitting back and acceding responsibility to the President of the United States, what they're creating is a unitarian form of government, authoritarianism, and it's really inconsistent with our form of government. And so I would hope that they would, object. I would hope that they would not cower. I would hope that they would not be fearful. I would hope that they would stand up and represent the interests of their constituents, because more and more people are coming out to these town hall meetings where they're asking questions of members of Congress, particularly Republican members of Congress. And the simple question is, or the simple demand is, do your job, period.
Shouldn't be that hard. Yes, sir.
That's why we need John in Congress.
Thank you,
One of the foundational theories is that the judiciary is as removed as possible from politics, from partisanship. So it is very difficult for me to understand the cheering on of a victory of a judge in a state election. I don't think judges should be elected at any level. And we should do everything possible to remove the judiciary from political pressure. It's not perfect, but so I really object to the idea that something important happened yesterday in Wisconsin. I think something egregious is happening when we politicize the election of state and local judiciary to that effect.
So I agree with you that we should not politicize judicial elections. However, when you have the richest man in this country seek to buy an election, seek to buy votes, that says something about our system of government. So I think the repudiation yesterday, or I shouldn't say never, the victory yesterday was more a repudiation of Elon Musk and less about the judiciary.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I need to start by just thanking you for your leadership and power.
Thank you.
You have, for your entire career, cared about the people who are voiceless and sometimes silenced.
Yeah.
The murder of Robert Brooks, unfortunately, you were conflicted in that case, and I understand that. But it's now illustrated. Let me just say this. I run an organization that has members of people who are inside prisons. The number of people who have reported to us clearly that they cannot complain to anyone about the beatings they endure illustrates that this is a systemic problem. There's a systemic problem of how do we let them have a place for their rights. I'm wondering, because you are such a thoughtful person, if you do have any thoughts about systemic reform we can make to the correctional system of the state of New York, and whether there's any kind of an ombudsman we could create that would provide the kind of recognition that William Vanden Heuvel made many years ago when he worked on the Board of Corrections of New York City, that people inside have rights.
Yeah. That's an excellent question and an excellent point, and thank you for that. First, we are talking to the legislature about some reforms with respect to any possible conflicts that may come up again, so I do not have to remove myself in cases like Mr. Brooks and the other case in Midstate. And I do know that the legislature has been holding hearings in the aftermath of Mr. Brooks's death, murder. Let me say just death. And we've not participated, but if I can find some more time in my schedule, I would love, obviously, to play a role because I do know that a number of inmates, individuals have reached out to us with respect to the culture at that correctional facility. And it's not just unique to that correctional facility, it's systemic. And we obviously need to make some changes and some reforms because they are members of our society and they do have rights and they need to be respected. And I thank you for that.
All right. Got time for just, I think, two more questions. You had your hand up, sir, and then Art Chang.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for being here and all the work you're doing. I'm curious, today at 4 o'clock, President Trump is issuing his new tariff announcement. He's been doing this consistently since he's re-entered the White House, and the markets have fluctuated greatly.
Yes.
Anyone who has advanced knowledge of what he's going to announce has great trading opportunities, and we can assume that the SEC is not going to go after them. Is your office looking into unusual trading to see if anyone's taking advantage of advanced knowledge of all these announcements?
So as you know, we do police the marketplace. The Martin Act obviously is the jurisdiction that is the lens by which we determine whether or not individuals have violated the Martin Act. So we do have a number of attorneys and inspectors and economists who are studying to see whether or not individuals are taking advantage of the market. We are also, as you know, looking at crypto and coins and individuals who are engaging in grift, not only on the federal level, but also on the state level. And that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah. clear rules of the road would help. Also, note we share a large border with Canada, New York State does, and the possibility of
Yes.
the ongoing trade war will not benefit our state's economy.
And the fact that the loss of our standing across the world, across the globe.
And then there's that. Art Chang.
Hello, Tish. Thank you so much for
How are
everything
you?
you've done. In my private life, I'm great. And the moment I poke my head outside of my little bubble, I'm not so good.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm especially worried about New York.
Yeah.
And I am really closely following the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which would call for the shift in taxes from huge tax cuts to the most wealthy among us
Yeah.
to tax increases
Yeah.
for the poorest among us,
Yeah.
and the necessary elimination of social services.
Mhm.
And where I go with this is, and I'll detail this in a little bit for the audience, but I think a lot about the Insurrection Act, because Project 2025 calls for the use of the Insurrection Act to quell domestic disturbances.
Mhm.
So in New York City, over 60% of New Yorkers receive some form of Medicaid.
Mhm.
40% receive some form of SNAP
Mhm.
or other food supports.
Yep.
So I imagine the day when a mom, goes to the grocery store with her EBT card
Yeah.
to buy a basket of groceries and finds there is no balance.
Yeah.
Or someone who has been in an accident goes to the hospital and finds that there is no Medicaid. So I wonder about civil district. I worry about people. I worry about New Yorkers.
Yeah.
But I also worry about what the natural reaction to that is going to be, and how that connects to the possibility and the excuse for the Insurrection Act. Because as we've seen from the imposition of authoritarian regimes, starting with the Nazis to today, when you study them, the trigger is often the intentional imposition of distress and hardship on populations to create an excuse for federal intervention using the military. I'd love to hear your comments on that.
So let me just say, authoritarian governments also go after institutions. They've gone after the media. They've gone after government. They're going after the judiciary. All of the signs are there. And I am concerned about the privatization of Social Security. I'm concerned about the cuts to Medicaid. All you have to do is go to the town hall meetings and you hear senior citizens and people who are disabled, who are very much concerned about what could possibly happen if these cuts go forward. But all we need is 3 votes in the House, a couple of votes in the Senate. All we need is for some Republicans with some steel in their backbone, with some courage to stand up and do the right thing. And I think as a result of what happened in Wisconsin, the close margins in those 2 votes in Florida, perhaps, and of course, Cory Booker, 25 hours. Perhaps this is a turning point, perhaps. Listen, I wake up every day drunk on hope and I don't drink.
Yeah.
But I am extremely hopeful. And I march into my office every day focused on, those individuals who are historically been ignored, those individuals who are relying upon me, those individuals who believe that somehow that faith and fear cannot share the same space. And I'm that person who believes that faith and fear cannot share the same space, and who recognizes that there's more of us than there are of him, or I should say of those individuals, and that he is really just one man, and that we represent government. We are of the people. And so we've got to stand up. And as Cory Booker said, we've got to get, in good trouble. We've got to stand up. This is a moral moment for all of us, to defend our country, our democracy, our rights, our freedoms, and to recognize what is at stake and not be afraid, and to provide hope and inspiration to all of those out there in my beloved Brooklyn who come to me each and every day and give me a hug, who are fearful and say, no, I need you. I need you now more than ever. Do not be afraid. And I'm not waiting for 4 years to pass. I'm waiting for 2 years to pass. So we're going to turn this around, and I will do my job to delay as much as possible until Hakeem Jeffries is the next Speaker of the House.
With that, I want to thank the Attorney General of New York for joining us here at Citizens Union. This is an exemplary civic conversation. Thank all of you, our members, for joining us this morning in person, and those of you online. Laws matter. Leadership matters. Courage matters. Be not afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh. Be not afraid. That's a song.
It is.
Yeah.